All right, let's get into Keep It Open or Close It Out, and let's start with Barry's favorite player, Tua Tagovailoa, traveling to Buffalo. I mean, last week, 10 for 28, 145 yards, touchdown, 28 rushing yards.
Ooh. By the way,
this is a tough one.
If you had told me, if you'd said, guess how many completions he had in that game, I'd have taken under 10. I'm amazed he had 10. He looked awful.
It felt that way.
He looked awful. They should put him at tight end. How about that?
We won't get no stats on that.
No.
We won't get no numbers.
Okay, so what's your question here?
I mean, can you start Tua in the fantasy playoffs? Which sounds crazy to ask that, but the matchup, the weather, how he's looked for the last 2 weeks, it's a lot to weigh here.
It is. I hedged. I'll be honest with you. I hedged. He's my QB7. No, he's my QB7. Right, here's the positives. I'll give you the positive side of Tua, which is that he's got Tirico Hill. He's got Jalen Waddle. The odds are they're not going to. It's a very important matchup. It's a divisional matchup. The Bills have shown some signs of weakness, if you will. Yes. Right. I mean, last 4 weeks, Buffalo's given up over 40 pass attempts a game. They're a bottom 10 pass defense over the last month. I mean, Mike White on half a rib, almost threw for 300 yards against him.
Similar passing concepts,
right.
McDaniel and LaFleur.
Correct. So those are all the positives here. But to your point, he's had 4 games against the Bills and he struggles. He's averaging 10 fantasy points per game against the Bills in his career. Now, obviously, he didn't have Tirico Hill or Mike McDaniel. He had Jalen Waddle, but he didn't have Tyreek or Mike McDaniel in these games. Buffalo overall this season has been good against quarterbacks, 6th fewest fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Game is going to be in cold weather. Tua's looked brutal the last 2 games, under a 55% completion percentage here. So I'm as a low-end QB1. He is definitely risky. I'm probably keeping it open, but like I said, I don't think he's a no-brainer start. I don't think he is I've been riding Tua the whole time. It depends on what other options you have. I'm probably not benching him for a so-so guy with a good matchup.
Right.
Right? But I do think if you had another viable option, I think that's something to consider.
What about you, Lawrence?
If he lays an egg, I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah.
That's my point. Especially, by the way, Tirico Hill might not be 100%.
Right. So I respect everything you just said. I feel very similar. Obviously, he's my guy here. Hasn't been successful against the Bills. The interesting thing about this is the one time they played the Bills earlier this year. Now, it was a different game. It was in Miami. It was warm, all this, that, and the third. But the Dolphins won that game. Tua was actually pretty good against the Bills the first time around. The thing is, the Bills had 90 offensive plays to the Dolphins 39.
Right.
So in those 39 plays, Tua went 13 to 18 for 186 and a touchdown. Now, I'm going to keep it open, but it's because I have faith in Mike McDaniels to adjust and for the offense to take what the defense gives them, because it was there versus the Chargers. They was forcing it. Tua was forcing the issue. So I'm going to trust them to adjust. Don't know if they'll win the game, but fantasy-wise, like you said, I'm not going to stress myself benching him over some quarterbacks, but it's not like Tua's a must-start, but we must keep it open.
So that's fair. I'll just say this. The only thing I'll say is if for some reason Tirico Hill isn't going to play, and the expectation is that he does.
That changes it.
Right, but if Tirico Hill's out, then I'm out on Tua.
Let me throw one more thing at you, because we're going to do Jalen Waddle next, so these are tied together. You wake up Saturday morning or Friday, and the weather's just an absolute mess. Does that play into this even more? Because the conditions are expected to be bad, and Tua doesn't really strike you as this Josh Allen all-weather kind of quarterback.
Yeah. I think if it, I think if it was bad weather, if it's kind of blizzard,
worse than what we think it's going to be,
like blizzard-like conditions, I'm probably benching Tua. In that scenario, yes.
All right.
Some quarterbacks can, right, with strong arm guys or guys that are mobile quarterbacks that could run around. Like Josh Allen will be fine regardless of the weather. But yeah, Tua's not that guy.
So let's talk about Jalen Waddle then. Waddle, obviously, let's assume Tirico Hill plays to make this conversation a little bit more straightforward. Lawrence, with Waddle, last 2 games, 9 targets, 3 catches, 40 yards. Just not much. As Tua falters, Waddle falters. So if you don't have confidence in Tua, as we've talked about, does that carry over to Waddle?
You got a great point. You make a great point, and it's the same thing. I feel the exact same way. It's like, I'm going to keep this open because it's Waddle. The past 2 games have not looked great. 40 receiving yards total again. But like you said, Tua's fallen down the past 2 games, as has Waddle. He hasn't had a 100-yard game since week 8. And I don't know if we suspect that this game, but we could at least hope for some more volume. Again, the Dolphins have to take what's underneath, take what the defense gives you, and that's why I still have a little faith in Waddle. Keep it open.
All right. Over the last month, the Bills are a top 5 run defense. They've been really good against the run. And so when you think about the fact that the Dolphins are over a touchdown underdog in this game, my expectation is they're going to have to throw. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball effectively. Jeff Wilson Jr. might miss this game. Obviously, he left last week with the injury. So my expectation here is that they have to throw, that they're going to be down, they're going to be throwing. And when they're throwing to Tyreek and they're throwing to Jaylen Waddle. I'm at wide receiver 20, which is the lowest I've had him all year long.
Right.
So he's a low-end wide receiver 2 for me, but I'm still starting Jaylen Waddle. I just think when you get to the playoffs, even though there's been a little bit of disappointing performance from him the last 2 weeks, I'm still keeping it open on Jaylen Waddle because of his talent, because of the volume I'm expecting, and because he's one of those guys that all he needs is one play. Like, he can make your day in one play.
Yes.
He's got that ability.
Let's stay with the wide receivers here and look at Mike Evans against a tough Bengals defense. Bengals are one of the hottest teams in football right now on both sides of the ball. Mike Evans, kind of an anomaly right now in terms of what we're so used to from him is consistency, and that has not been the case, Barry.
You see it right there on your screen. He's got one game in the last 5 with double-digit fantasy points. That was Week 10 against the Seahawks, and he had 10.4. You know what I mean? Like, just 5 for 54. Mike Evans has been under 60 yards, as you see it there on your screen, in 5 straight games. He's averaging under 8 fantasy points per game in his last 3. Last week, he had 1 end zone target. That was his first since Week 9. He hasn't been a top 30 wide receiver since Week 8. Like, I'm at wide receiver 30. I'm wide receiver 25 this week. You feel like positive touchdown regression is coming, but yeah, I'm probably closing it out on Mike Evans if I have, because the truth of the matter is he's been so bad for so long. If you've made the playoffs, you've made it despite Mike Evans, not because of him.
Right.
You have found other options, whether it's Garrett Wilson or somebody else. You have found somebody else to take that wide receiver spot, and I would roll with whoever it is that got you to the playoffs rather than Mike Evans, because it's not just Mike Evans, guys. Brady's looked bad.
Yeah.
Brady's looked bad.
Line's terrible.
That offensive line has looked awful. The Bengals, we know, can get after it, and so I don't know, guys. I would look. The narrative changes on Evans if that long touchdown doesn't get called back because of the holding penalty. So they were looking at him, and it's not working. So maybe they go back and be like, hey, we got to figure out a way to move Evans around and free him up and get him the ball. But he's a risk reward wide receiver 3 for me. And so, given the premise of the segment, keep it open and close it out. I'm more likely than not closing it out on Evans.
Every week I come on this show and we talk about Mike Evans in this segment, and we say, we're going to leave it open. Well, how many weeks can we continue to do that? We're going to go 3 for 3 here because I'm calling the bartender right there. Hey, man, close out my tab on Mike Evans. I don't want nothing to do with that this week, right? Since week 4,
close it out.
Close that thing out. Big tipping right here, too. Since week 4, the Bengals have led up a quarterback throwing for over 300 yards. They just held Patrick Mahomes to under 230 a couple of weeks ago. What you think they're going to do to Brady and them? They've been looking bad, So, and Mike Evans is part of that. They mixing in Julio a little bit here and there. Russell Gage has come back. The only consistent target out there for them is Chris Godwin. So, close that tab up, baby.
Yeah, they're a top 10 scoring defense over the last month. The Bengals are. They're favored in this game. The game's in Tampa Bay, and they're still favored by 3.5. So they're basically saying they think the Bengals are at least 5 points better than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. By the way, you ever notice, like, when you're at a restaurant and you're ready to close it out, or you want the check, or you're at a bar, you're ready, you do this? You sort of like, you're over the waiter's over there, and you're just like, and like they know to bring you your check, which is weird because you never actually write checks anymore. You know what I mean? Like you throw down your card or whatever, you throw down some cash, but it's not like you don't wave over a waiter being like, like.
I always think it's signing it.
Is that? But
that's what I think.
The check when you
you're
get
right.
a card.
It's just an old.
It's an old person thing. Do you guys do that? Like, I'm an old man, so I'll do that because I'm an old.
Yeah, and I was a waiter, so I used to like that. That's how it's loud in a restaurant.
Right.
So if somebody didn't do that, I'd be like, I don't know what you're doing for me.
That.
You neither drink, you need more food.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Where were you a waiter?
At a Red Lobster.
At a Red Lobster.
Yes.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Oh, it's the worst job I've ever had.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Hook us up with them biscuits.
Yeah, exactly.
And I've had some weird jobs.
Hook us up with them biscuits,
How many times did people I need more biscuits?
People would ask for bags to go home, and I didn't care. I'd give them the bags every
Right,
time.
exactly.
You want a good tip. And I was in college. You're working for every last dollar. Every last dollar.
Yeah, exactly.
You know how long it would take to scrub out the smell of endless shrimp?
I bet.
45-minute showers.
Oh, my God.
Awful. I'm
yeah.
very happy to be here. Okay, that's why I have a
You guys
smile
are
on my face every time I'm on this show.
Right. Hey, just a note for our producer, Brian Rubin. Next week when Connor's here, I want a whole big bucket of peel and eat shrimp. I'm going to make him peel it during the show.
I'd have nightmares that night. Waiter nightmares. That's a real thing.
I can't. That's amazing.
Yep. So
fantastic. And listen. I was a paper boy. We all have jobs where we started out. I was a paper back. This is how old I am. Back when you actually had newspapers and
you throw them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I rode my. This was when I was a kid in high school. I would ride my bike, and it was one of my high school jobs. I ride my bike, and I literally had the bag, and I throw papers.
Yeah.
It's terrible. And if it missed, I'd be like, I kept driving.
Yeah, tough luck. They can go find it.
It'll be all right.
All right. Back to the wide receivers here. Another guy trending the wrong way, Hollywood Brown. Tough matchup against Denver. His quarterback is now out for the season with a torn ACL, and the last two games for Hollywood Brown have not been pretty. Targets have been great, 16 targets, but only 10 catches for 80 yards. Colt McCoy will be starting on the road against the Broncos pass defense. Any confidence in Hollywood Brown, or is this one closed for sure?
I'm probably closing it out again. I'm at wide receiver 31, so it sort of depends on the size of your league. If I'm in a 12-team league, 3 wide receiver league, I think you can consider it. He's similar to Jalen Waddle in that he's one of those guys that all he needs is one. But and I changed my tune, by the way, if Rondale Moore is out once again. But my expectation here is that Rondale Moore actually is going to get a lot of love in this game. It's worth noting. Since week 10, the Broncos allowed the 3rd most receiving yards per game to the slot. And so Rondale Moore is going to make the others receiving votes. Again, if he comes back, we haven't really gotten an update yet. The Cardinals haven't practiced yet this week on Rondale Moore. But so I think DeAndre Hopkins, you're still starting him, obviously, because of the volume there. But we just haven't seen it consistently yet from Hollywood Brown. And given the matchup and Colt McCoy, who doesn't have the arm strength of a Kyler Murray, he's wide receiver 31. I'm probably closing it out here on Hollywood Brown, unless I'm in a deeper league.
Look, check it. Look, we got Colt McCoy in the game now, right?
Against possibly Brett Rippon.
There you go.
Yeah.
What a matchup.
What a matchup.
And still, at Denver, where the over-under is 36.5. So how many players from a Cardinals offense in a game that's 36.5, how many Cardinals players we going to start with Colt McCoy at quarterback? Hopkins, like you said, we got to do that. You don't
Denver's favored in this game, by the way.
Bingo. Look, you don't give DeAndre Hopkins targets. He going to fight you. You got to start James Conner because the volume's going to be there. So it's just like, nah, man, I'm good on Marquise Brown this week. And like you said, he got 8 targets last week, but it didn't really amount to much. So I'm going to close it out on Hollywood.
And I think you could argue that the Broncos are a better defense than the Patriots. And again, this is a game in Denver. Colt McCoy's fine. I think he'll be fine. Like I said, I might change my tune a little bit if Rondale Moore is out, just because I think it'll be a narrow target tree. But this is a low-scoring, ugly game.
Moving over to the running backs, Nick Chubb coming off a tough week against Cincinnati where not much was working on the ground for him, did not find the end zone. They now have Baltimore. We've seen Baltimore obviously play in these grinded-out games, especially the 10-9 win over the Steelers. Nick Chubb, somebody that people usually leave in the lineup and forget, Barry. Is that the case for the playoffs?
I think you're keeping it open on Nick Chubb. I get it. Like, Ravens are the number 1 run defense over the last month, and he has been bad, especially since Deshaun Watson came into the game, into the league as a quarterback, as a starting quarterback, I should say. You see it there on your screen, and what Nick Chubb has done with Deshaun Watson starting. He's averaging 8.4 fantasy points per game, and 8.2, because
math.
Right, there you go. Hashtag math. I was told there'd be no math. He's averaging under 60 rushing yards per game. Now, again, they were at the Texans, they were at the Bengals. The Texans one is the one that makes you nervous, though. But he was so bad. Watson at least looked like an NFL quarterback last week. He's getting better. The expectation is he'll be a little bit better as well against Baltimore. I just don't know how you bench Nick Chubb. Like, who else do you have? He's my running back 15. So that's the lowest I've had Nick Chubb all season. He's now a running back 2. He's a mid-tier running back 2, whereas he's normally locked in as a low-end RB1. But if they get in close, you'd expect him to get a touchdown. I'm going to keep it open on Nick Chubb. I get the question, but I'm keeping it open.
This is like when we talked about George Kittle last week. Like, it's George Kittle, bruh. You know, even though he didn't go on to have a decent game, it's still George Kittle. This is still Nick Chubb here. And again, I'll go back to the over-under again. This game, 37.5. The Ravens are going to do the exact same thing as what the Browns are trying to do, and that's run the ball. We still don't even know who the quarterback's going to be on the Ravens side. It could be rookie Anthony Brown making his first start. So that'll keep the Browns in a situation to where they want to run the ball. You mentioned Deshaun Watson. He improved from his first start of the season, but he's not quite there yet. So they're going to keep trying to ride Nick Chubb. Got to leave it open because you know Nick Chubb at any point, he could break one of them long ones.
A little bit more of a difficult one here, guys. Travis Etienne takes on the Cowboys. Etienne has not been the pass-catching threat that I think we all hoped for when they used a first-round pick on him.
You want to hear a crazy stat?
Please.
Travis Etienne has a lower target share than Derrick Henry this year. Think about that.
Does not make sense.
Think about that. I mean, they're not using him in the passing game the way we would have hoped this year. Having said that, they are using him a lot. Over the last 2 games, he's gotten 80% of the running back snaps. He's had at least 16 touches in the last 2 games. I get it. It's a tough matchup with Dallas. He hasn't been great. I have him as a borderline top 20 play. Comes in at running back 19 in my initial ranks this week. I'm reluctantly keeping it open just because I don't know that you have 2 other running backs that are guaranteed to get anywhere from 16 to 20 touches in a game. I get that it's a tough matchup with Dallas, and he hasn't been great recently, but he's another one that just all he needs is 1 play.
Yep.
So I'm reluctantly keeping it open on Travis Etienne.
Look, the good thing is he's not, well, we don't expect him to be running back 47 again, which is what he was in Week 14, right? The Cowboys, the most recent 2 running backs that they faced, Jonathan Taylor and Dameon Pierce, had moderate success against them. Not crazy, like 82 and 78 rushing yards respectively, so nothing crazy. If Etienne could hover in that range, though it's going to be hard to feel like he could get the 20 carries to do it. He'll have to do it through the receiving game, which you just mentioned. He hasn't been getting that. But like I say, the last 2 backs the Cowboys face have had okay success. He's in 80% of the running back snaps over the last 2 games. Can't leave him on the bench.
47.5 over under 2. So Vegas, BetMGM does expect points in this game.
Leave it open.
Last one, and this is another conversation really about usage. DeAndre Swift traveling to take on the Jets. One note from me here, guys, before we get into this one. Quinnen Williams is not practicing today. That could have a big impact on if you are keeping it open or closing it out with Swift. Barry, the big thing for me, he was out-carried by Jamal Williams last week. This has been a roller coaster with Swift all year. What are you doing? What are you doing here?
1 game. There's 1 game that DeAndre Swift has played this year where he's had more than 5 receptions. He's been under 5 in every other game. He's had single-digit touches in 5 of the past 6 games. And you mentioned the matchup with the Jets, who have allowed 1 receiving touchdown to a running back all season. That's tied for 2nd best in the NFL. Assuming Williams plays, and again, he missed practice today, so that would change my tune a little bit. But assuming Williams gets back by the end of the week, I'm keeping Quinnen Williams, not Jamal.
Sure.
Assuming Quinnen Williams plays, then I'm closing it out on DeAndre Swift. Just it's too scary for me. His usage is too scary and too up and down in a tough matchup on the road at the Jets.
For a second, I thought you was going to go the other way, but for the first time, I think we're going to go 100% on this one. I'm closing it too. We talked about these 2 running backs last week, and DeAndre Swift made me look foolish, right? After that 18-touch game where he went for over 100 and 110 total yards and a touchdown, I'm like, he's back.
Yeah, sure.
He's not back.
No.
9 touches, 39 yards. And what's interesting to us,
in a game in which the Lions moved the ball, were leading for much of the game.
Yes.
They were throwing.
The script was in his favor.
The script was in his favor.
Was in his
and they were throwing a ton. And he's their pass-catching running back.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, Justin Jackson's getting run.
And this was in a game where Jamal Williams didn't even score a rushing touchdown.
Right.
So, like, come on, man. That's just too scary, especially against the Jets defense. Close it up, baby. We going home.
The only thing that I'll note about that game, which I think is worth noting, is they had a couple of long touchdown passes. You know, they had the long one to Jameson Williams. They had the, they had the long one to DJ Shark as well. And so, I don't expect that to be the case against the Jets. The Jets defend the deep ball really well. And so they're going to have to change the script somewhat on the road at New York. And so I could see them going more run heavy, especially in cold weather on the road at the Jets. But I don't know how you could trust DeAndre Swift in this game. If Quinnen Williams is out, then he becomes a viable high-end flex, But at the moment, I'm closing it out. If it makes you feel better, though, about your bad call on Swift last week, Lawrence, at least you weren't in front of 14 million people saying you believe in Tua Sunday night, right?
That's the silver lining right there.
Yeah,
when you were saying that earlier, I was like, damn, I do not want to be known like him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I got trolled on Twitter, and rightfully so. Rightfully so.
Meanwhile, I'm the dude always talking about Tua. Nobody give me anything.
No.
I'm good with that.
You were
keep a low profile. We're going to break. When we're back, it's What's on Tap, our Week 15 backfield breakdown.
And Manson.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and Rotoworld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from Rotoworld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.